I haven't been in a while.
I think you've been here more than I have, though. I'm like the fourth consistent person.
But we love you, so that's important. Okay, let's put it up here so that
No, we have to rank. We have to do. We
Yeah,
have to do
we
tier
have-
ranking.
Everything on kids these days, they all need to rank everything.
that's how you're ranking everything.
Who's S tier? Who's A tier?
Okay, Chavra, we are Baruch Hashem entering into the second stage of the Ramchal's Maamar HaGeulah, where the Ramchal is going to explain to us that Geulah does not happen through one process, but it happens through two. That there are two major processes of Geulah, and that is the gist of what we are going to be speaking about this evening, and this is going to explain a lot. It's going to explain a lot. Says the Ramchal, the Shlavei HaGeulah, the steps of Geulah are as follows. He says, Da, you need to know, Ki nimtzeu beis zmanim, that there are two times. Umatsanum begeulas Mitzrayim vegeulas Bavel, and we found them both in the Geulah of Mitzrayim and the Geulah of Bavel. Now, Bavel, he's not going to go into detail here about, but Mitzrayim he is. And Mitzrayim is current events of the parashas. So this is a good intro to what is going on in Parashat Shmos and Parashat Vayera, but B'Shalach. We're about to see, especially at this transition point between Parashat Shmos and Parashat Vayera, we're going to see this playing out in a very real way. Says Ramchal, "V'noida lanu shekein yeh ba'asida lehigalos v'meira v'yamin," and this is how it's going to roll. This is the template, the blueprint, if you will, of how it's going to work. V'meira v'yamin. It says, "Val ele shnei hazmanim nemer apasuk sheyischalti bo berishan," and about these two stages of Geulah is the pasuk that I mentioned at the beginning. Al tismechi oyavti li ki nafalti kamti. That was the pasuk. So Al tismechi oyavti li, don't be so happy, my enemy. Zeu azman harishon v'nikra pekida. This is the first time v'nikra pekida. That's the key word. The key word is pekida. What does the word pekida mean?
The shorts keeps coming up in my Torah readings.
Yeah, it's all over.
And then in my davenings and
Yes.
And now you're gonna finally tell me what the shorts.
Yeah. So you find this in the Torah, Hashem pakad esara kasher, that Hashem was paked Sarah. It means to recall, to remember. It is some kind of remembrance, but it's not the same as another word that we more commonly use for remembrance, which is zechira, right? And so you have zichronenu piktonenu. These two phrases are talking about two different types of Geulah, two different stages of Geulah. You'll also remember from last week's Pasha that Moshe Rabbeinu comes and tells the Jewish people that Hashem has been poked you, he's remembered you. And Yosef tells the Jewish people just before he dies that that Hashem is going to poked you and you're going to take my bones with you out of Mitzrayim. That's called Pekida. Hashem is going to remember you to take you out of Mitzrayim. These two stages of Geulah, says Ramchal, also show up in the pasuk. Ki eshev b'choshech Hashem orli. So, don't be so happy with me that I've fallen. I've gotten up. But ki eshev b'choshech Hashem orli, that though I dwell in darkness, Hashem is my light. Hu Hasheni v'nikra zechira. That's the second type of Geulah. That's called zechira. These two stages are going to happen. Pekida and zechira. That's the template for Geulah. Now we're going to need to describe and define what these things are. It says, "V'lo b'pasuk hazeh levad." It's not just in this pasuk. Ki bahar b'psukim nirmazu elu shnei hazmanim, because this shows up in tons of psukim. V'chein, because the pasuk says, "Hisna'ari ma'afar kumi." Shake yourself awake from the dirt and get up. That's called pekida. Zel pekida. His pachti moisrei tzovarayich. Shake off the or open up the shackles around your neck. That's called zechira. Meaning the psukim that describe Geulah describe two things. There's a awakening and then a releasing yourself of bonds. Both of these things are occurring one after the next. Awaken my light because my light is coming. Zman ha-Pekida. That's called Pekida. Uchvoid Hashem alayich zarach, and Hashem's honor is going to shine on you. Zman ha-Zechira. That is the Zechira. So these are the two stages that are going to be happening at every point in the process of Geulah. There's Pekida and there's Zechira.
Could we just say that the basic difference?
Not yet.
We're not there yet.
We're going to define it. We're going to define it.
It's a great question.
No, that is the question.
Yeah.
That's the central question. But what he's pointing out is that he's saying in all of the psukim that describe Geulah, there's like a comma. There's a something and then a something. He says, and I'm calling these two things Pekida and Zechira, and you're going to see how all of this ties into everything that happens in Mitzrayim and everything that is going to happen in the future. So he says, and I'm going to explain these things to you, these two separate times with enormous secrets. But because they are such tremendously overwhelming and sublime secrets, I'm not going to explain too much. I'm not going to explain a lot. The only things that I'm going to tell you are those things that if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't be able to understand. Meaning you're not going to get them anywhere else. Once I've told you this stuff, you're going to be able to see how this ties into everything. So he says, I'm going to give you the building blocks, and on that, you're going to be able to understand a lot more. And this is Kedarka B'Kodesh in the Ramchal, specifically in the Sefer. I'm going to explain enough that you know what to do so that you can figure out the rest. Right? Like, I'm gonna take you to the website that has all the information for you to figure out the rest. That's effectively it. I'm giving you the way of understanding this. From there, you can figure out. Okay. Zman ha-Pekida haya b'Mitzrayim barishon. Pekida happened in Mitzrayim first. Vehu she'amar HaKasav, this is what the parsha says last week. Vayar Elokim es bnei Yisrael vayeda Elokim. That Hashem saw what was happening with the Jewish people. Vayeda Elokim, and Hashem knew. What did Hashem know? What did he see? What did he know? What's going on? Va'omer lecha ma Teda, you need to know Pekida v'gam loy legamre v'shar hakilkulim ein tikunam rak b'zechira. He says two things that you need to know. The first is that Pekida is what was going on there, and the thing that is cured by Pekida is a little bit of the kilkul harishon that we spoke about. The four different things that are wrong with Galus, they begin to get fixed. The first one begins to get fixed at the time of Pekida, but not entirely. What was the kilkul harishon? We spent a good amount of time on this. Was the misalignment of the shefa, of that which Hashem wants to give to the world. Hashem wants to give a lot of things to the world, lots of bracha. In a time of Galus, those pipelines, if you will, are not talking to each other. So Hashem wants to inspire the world with goodness and kindness and positivity. They're not going to the right places. So the connections are attenuated, and we don't experience that good. Hashem wants to give it, but there's no communication. There's a lack of trust that goes to other places, and sometimes it goes to waste. But it doesn't hit home. We don't end up. There is a realignment, a little bit of that. We begin to experience good in a way that we were not able to before. The beginnings of things start to feel better. That's how Pekida feels. Shara Kilkulim, the rest, are only ever going to be fixed at the final stage called Zechira. Let's understand this a little bit better. How did it work in Mitzrayim? V'sham kasav, and there the pasuk says, "Vayishma Elokim es nakasam, vayiskor Elokim es brisai." That Hashem heard nakasam, their pains, their groans, vayiskor Elokim es brisai, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers His covenant. That sounds like it's zechira, right? But that's still at the very beginning stages. So the Ramchal is now going to challenge, hold up a second. What stage are we talking about here? Is this Bekida or is this Zechira? Now he explains. He says, V'ha'emes, the truth is, Ki b'ha'alois ha'chefetz lifnei ha'moshel ha'yochid lig'ol es ha'shchina v'es Yisrael. When it arises in the will of the ruler, the singular, unique ruler of all existence, to redeem the Shekhinah, His presence, and the Jewish people, as yotza koyach milafanav, then there is a power that comes forth from Him, v'yischil laredis b'chol hamadregos mimadrega lemadrega, that begins to descend in all levels, from level to level to level to level to level. Meaning Hashem wants something. He wants to achieve something in the world. So He begins by directing that desire to its appropriate location. V'ha'emes, and the truth is, Shebamakim harishon shesham nisgaber zeh hakoyach ve'heret hakfo grasai heim shnei ha'ma'oris hagdolim v'nisgavim asher lahem kol maseh ha'olamos. When Hashem wants to do this, the first things that are illuminated are the first things that switch on, so to speak, are the two great luminaries that direct all the things that happen in the world. Now you're looking at me saying, I don't know what you're talking about. He's going to explain. Illuminated. V'heim nikroim b'mashal are referred to by the Mekubalim as Mazal Elyon and Mazal Tachton, the upper Mazal and the lower Mazal. Uvederech Ikar, and now he's going to explain in ways that we can experience and understand from things that we're more familiar with. Uvederech Ikar, Yud K Vav K, Aleph K Yud K, Ha'omdim Beruma Shel Olam. This is talking about the names Yud K Vav K and Aleph K Yud K, meaning the name Yud K Vav K, which we are familiar with, and the name that HaKadosh Baruch Hu shares with Moshe Rabbeinu last week's parasha, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. When Moshe Rabbeinu says, "What am I supposed to tell him?" Ehyeh Shalachani Aleichem. Those two names of Hashem are that which illuminate all of existence. Ha'om de meruma shalom, that stand on the heights of the world, and then he explains a remez in gematrias here, which is not necessary for our understanding, but we'll read it. It says, if you add those up together, it's the same gematria as the word zachar. That's the yiskar. There's a zechira on the level of Yud Ke Vav Ke and Aleph Hey Yud Ke. Just to explain very, 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 very simply. The name Aleph Hey Yud Hey is also a word in the Hebrew language. What does that word mean? I will be. So the Zohar Kodesh explains that when a person is sleeping, they're still alive, right? They're not dead, but the Gemara says that it's a little bit of death. It's a little bit of death. It's not dead, but it's a little bit of death. In what way is a person a little bit dead when they're sleeping?
Their neshama goes up, or no?
It's true, but practically, meaning in ways that we can say in simple English.
They're not conscious.
You're not conscious, which
Dead
means
to the world.
dead to the world. What does that mean?
They're not. Their mind is not available
So
to other people.
they are not capable of acting using their rational mind. This is important to know. This is Gemara in the beginning of Baba Kama. The Gemara in Baba Kama asks the question about Adam Mu'ud La'olam. The person is always liable for damages. And the Gemara entertains the possibility that perhaps a person that is sleeping is not liable for damages.
Like sleepwalking.
Right.
For sure, be liable still.
He's still alive. So the Chazon Ish asks the question: what's the Havamina of the Gemara? So the Chazon Ish says that the Havamina that the Gemara has been the suggestion that the Gemara is saying is that when you're asleep, you're not called an Adam because you are not in rational control of yourself.
What do you call
It would be a question what exactly you're called, but you're not in rational control of yourself. Now, the way that Rabbi Nachman explains this very beautifully, but Mashal, and this is based on the Medrash Rabbah, that human beings are unique in that we stand upright. We stand upright because that is the order, the hierarchical order of how we are supposed to operate. Mind rules over eyes and ears and mouth and heart and the other faculties that we have. As opposed to a behemoth who walks with their mayach and their lave equidistant, right? Meaning sometimes the head is up and sometimes the head is down, and when an animal is eating, the head is down. Human beings, when we eat, our head is supposed to be up, right? We're supposed to eat like a human. To eat like a human means that your mind is still higher than your heart. But not when you're sleeping. When you're sleeping, your mind is equal to all the other parts of the body because it's dormant. It's not acting as the master of rational thought. You have lots right? Very, very democratic when you sleep. Your hand wants to go like this, it goes like that, right? But when you're awake, you're in control. At least we hope, right? We're supposed to be in control. That's the ideal. We're supposed to be in control of ourselves. So the aspect of a person that keeps them alive when they're asleep, the Zohar Kodesh explains, is the name Aleph Hey Yud Hey, which literally means I will be. It's that part of myself that is alive in potential. Because Baruch Hu is plugged in to keep you alive with potential, which is why you wake up in the morning and you say, I will be now comes to fruition. It's not just I will be, I am, which is the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. The name Yud Kei Vav Kei is, the Baal HaTanya explains in Shar Yochel Ve'emunah, means perpetual existence. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing me into existence as I am. Like in English, you have the present participle, right? I am running is different from I run. I run. When are we talking about? No, that's I ran. Well, hopefully, I ran should also be past. As opposed to I am running.
I'm currently running.
Right now, right?
Yeah.
So the name Yud Kei Vav Kei means creating perpetual existence, perpetually making be. As opposed to the verb mehaveh, to make something be in the present tense, Hashem makes be. When? In general. Yud Kei Vav Kei, the literal meaning of that word is Hashem is perpetually making be. When I'm conscious, I can experience that desire for Hashem for me to constantly be. And those are the two stages. In Golus, we are in a world of Ani Yeshena V'Libi Er. Shlomo Melech refers to that. I'm asleep, my heart is awake, but I'm asleep. So there is an awakening. Awake from that stage of potential to actualization. And those are the two names, Yud Ke Vav Ke and Aleph Ke Yud Ke. Those are the two names of Hashem that relate to our experience of other consciously perceiving ourselves as existing versus subconscious, somewhat like, very, very low level awareness of maybe one day could, should, might, perhaps become.
It's like saying like I'm alive, which is like I'm here versus I'm living. Like I'm actually living my life in like
Right.
an active, continuous form of life versus
Correct. I'm alive.
No.
I'm alive, and I have a pot plant that's also alive.
Right, exactly.
Right? There's when rises to Yud Ke Vav Ke, that's called Zechira. That's when we feel that we are not just alive but living, not just run but running, not just I am but I am being.
Potential is being filled.
Right. Constantly, perpetually, persistently. So v'kodim lezeh nimtzeis hapekida. But in the in-between stage, that's called pekida. Aval ha'emes, but the truth is, shekdimasa lemata v'loy lemala, ki lemala ha'zechira hi harishen mimene yatsa pekida. He says, but the truth is, you need to know that while experientially we experience pekida and then zechira, as far as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned, the higher level of zechira is the primary will of Hashem that then descends into a world where it begins the process. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the whole thing mapped out. So it starts at the place of zechira as far as Hashem is concerned, but we experience pekida first. Which is why the pasuk says, "Vayishma Elokim es nachasam, vayizkar Elokim es pri," so that it starts by Hashem with zechira. Hashem wants to wake us up because He wants zechira to happen. He wants the full thing to occur. So He wants to start shaking us, like no, wake up. And then there's that process of like the waking up to getting out of bed, to getting dressed, to putting on your shoes, to making it out the door. Galus completely is asleep. Out the door and doing what you're supposed to be doing is zechira. The period of time between being asleep and getting out the door, that's called pekida. But the goal, Hashem wants us to get out the door. So it starts with that. He's coming from above. We experience it from the beginning, from below. So he says, "Va'adayin lo pirash lecha." Just like danced around. So what is it? Maamar HaGeulah. This is phrases that you are familiar with. It says, when the koyach, when the strength, this power that comes from the Shorish HaShalim, it comes from Hashem's upper will to make this all happen, is drawn into that world called tzaddik, which is the midah of Yesod, which we're not going to explain now, but it's what's referred to in the Torah by Yaakov Avinu as Maamar HaGeulah. Maamar HaGeulah, what does Maamar HaGeulah literally mean? The redeeming angel. That redeeming angel, he says, that thing called redeeming angel is not just a turn of phrase. This has very deep theological significance. It says, "Az yarad ze hama'ar v'nigle l'shchina shehi bas zugoi." This desire reveals itself to the Shechina, to Hashem's presence that exists amongst us, that's latent, as potential, as with the Shechina. It says, "V'nasa makoyach sheloi nitan la miyom galus." gives it some kind of awakening that didn't exist from the day of exile until that day. Meaning, amongst the Jewish people in exile is the presence of Hashem. And we feel it in Shul, and we feel it in the Beis Medrash, and we feel it when we do mitzvahs. That Hashem's present, we sit at a Shabbos meal, and we feel the Shekhinah is there. There's moments of uplifting and meaning, and then they dissipate. Those feelings of feeling the presence of Hashem in our lives. Fleeting moments. But that presence is amongst us. We just don't feel it so much. And it gives us hope, and it gives us light, and it gives us love, and it gives us encouragement. And it propels us from one day to the next and one mitzvah to the next. But it doesn't pull us out of the muck of exile. It doesn't elevate our consciousness and our ability to grow and to succeed and to experience good and political, financial, economic, military success. Like Hashem's presence amongst us is the Inshira Katara, it's like Beis Medrash stuff. Like a Geschmack Taisus, and like a great davening, an amazing Ne'ilah, and a beautiful Seder. And we feel that. We feel all of those things. But that thing called the Shekhinah that's amongst us is HaGeulah, this redeeming malach that awakens that. Then all of a sudden something happens. What happens? It says, Va'az na'aseh chibur. Now there's a connection. Echad shelo nischaber min hayom shamarti ad hena. Something that wasn't there since Galus and happened until now. Ve'achar kach afarish lecha lama nikra pekida. And now I'll explain why this is called pekida. Meaning, so what happens is, ways, there's this awakening that exists in the Jewish people. We just didn't like talk in those terms. And it's hard for us to imagine this because we're living in a post-Pekida time. That's very clear. The Pekida has already happened, whereas at least has begun to happen. We're going to talk about stages of the Pekida as well. But if you compare like our life today versus the life of our great-great-great-grandparents, certainly. Yeah, it took 200 years ago in Eastern Europe, 200 years ago in Morocco, 200 years ago in Iraq and Iran and Aleppo and Libya and Algeria. Well, like Jews lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, basically on like the playlist just being repeated, right? There was like nothing else happening. What happened was generation after generation after generation, with the goal being, please make sure that your children are not the last generation of Yiddishkeit. Shkoyach, Baruch Hashem. Please make sure that make sure that your children don't intermarry. Make sure that your children, don't fall off the derech. And overwhelmingly, that's what happened. You understand? The rate of attenuation of Jews was fairly low. Was fairly low. Up until the Enlightenment, certainly, Jews lived from generation to generation, more or less. Control C, Control V. Population didn't really increase too much. There were very few major innovations, unless something terrible. Arguably, the majority of Jews living where they were would have continued in that way. Not much happening. Then all of a sudden something occurs and people start thinking about the world differently. It happens. And this Pekida that occurs happens again in waves and stages, but it's kedai to know, and many of the Svarim point this out, that this isn't just true in Klal Yisrael. This is true in the world in general. Because again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is realigning the Shefa Bracha. So all of a sudden, like, there's something called the Industrial Revolution and a technological revolution. And like, I'll give you the example that I think I mentioned this once or twice before, that I have a very senior colleague who's like already retired from the rabbinate, still involved in a lot of things to do with the rabbinate, but he noted that his mother was a typist for her entire career. So we're talking, he's maybe in his late 60s, maybe somewhere around there. And his mother, we're talking 100 years ago, kind of when she started her career, was a typist for her whole career. And in the entire career of typing, there was one technological innovation. And that was the automatic return. You know what the automatic return is? Meaning, right, I mean, when you type, it, and then when you get to the line, you have to go, right? That's the return key on the keyboard. Enter key is to go to the next line, you have to return. So the automatic return was when you hit that button,
You know what's
it was right. It was a whole world. That happened.
That was the greatest invention.
Right, she was a typist for 50 years.
It saved so much time.
And in the last 10 years of her career, there was one single technological innovation. We have technological innovations on the scale of that, and like hundreds of times more every year. Every year there are technical innovations that are well beyond. And you just consider for a moment like Moore's law of computing, that every year and a half, the amount of transistors that you could fit on a chip will double. So we're kind of tapping out at the end of Moore's law on a physical level now. That was basically the reality, meaning we can't actually fit any more. We're now at the scale of atoms. Like we have bytes. Like data is encoded on a chip. We can't encode it, although we might store even more information on the same size chip. So we might be entering into a whole new world right now of how much information could be stored in a smaller and smaller and smaller space. It's bizarre. I mean, consider that. I think the computers that sent man to the moon, you now have more computing power. I think it was the iPhone 4 had more processing power than the computers that sent man to the moon. Assuming they sent man to the moon, right? I'm saying those. It's a machine thing.
And it was the size of this room.
Much bigger, right? Much bigger. That's what did they say that when IBM first sold their first computer, they said to make that, was it 200? I think 200. They said they don't see a need for more than 200 personal computers in the market. Like that's about as much as people will need. What are people going to do with these things? And all of a sudden, this was like, it's a Meshuggah thing. When you realize like how much good exists in the world as a result of what human beings have been able to accomplish. Now, by the way, when we talk about like times where we did experience Geulah, so we have no idea what kind of technology was available to Klal Yisrael in the days of Shlomo HaMelech. I mean, when everything worked. Like, people lived great, long, successful, happy, healthy lives. And things were great. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know what that technology was. We don't know what they had at their disposal. We don't know how they ran their economies and their agricultural developments. Like we have no idea. But the Bikida means that there is a realignment of goodness,
Sure they didn't have landlords.
right? Probably, right?
I don't know.
So it says, V'teda, you should know, Shapekida al yedei hayesod, k'may she'amar v'Geulah hazechira al yedei hatiferes. Okay. I'm going to explain these things in like our regular achas in a moment, but we're just going to read the next two sentences.
So we're never gonna find out the differences.
And we'll
We
explain.
just did Pekida though. We know what Pekida is.
We're
Define one.
Pekida is the awakening
Yeah.
of experiencing good,
The first step of
Geulah. It's natural.
so Zechira is like the completeness of it.
We haven't gotten there yet. We'll explain. Don't worry. This is, we were on page.
I have a question. I don't
Yeah.
want to sidetrack. You can tell me if you can answer it after.
Sure.
So when Yosef says at the end of Vayechi, whatever he said,
Hold that question for one
you can
moment.
answer it.
For one
Or
moment.
is it
Yes.
after?
No, for one moment.
I just want to know what it means.
I'll-
Different than
So we'll explain this.
Is that we are?
Hold on a sec. We are. I'll find it for you in a second. Let's just read this one line and then we'll see it inside. So V'teda, you should know, Shapekida al yedei hayesod, k'may she'amar l'cha, Pekida is through Yesod, v'Geulah hazechira al yedei hatiferes. And Zechira is through Tiferes. V'lachein, and therefore, Nimtza koyach leMashiach ben Yosef or leMashiach ben David. This is where Mashiach ben Yosef comes and Mashiach ben David comes. V'shnei ha'pa'ulos, through these two activities, lekabel koyach lases chayil leGeulah asida. There are two stages of Geulah. One is Mashiach ben Yosef, one is Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef is called Pekida, Mashiach ben David is called Zechira. Yosef is Pakod Yivkod. That's why it's Yosef that says Pakod Yivkod. Because that's the world of Mashiach ben Yosef. To summarize it very, 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 very simply, Mashiach ben Yosef is the natural return of the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, to a good, happy, healthy life in Eretz Yisrael, to sovereignty, to economic success, to military prowess, to what today we would call the state of Israel. That's called Mashiach ben Yosef. That's the process of Pekida. Zechira is when that becomes a world of total revelation and beyond the natural world. And these two things happen in Mitzrayim. At the end of Parshas Shmos, the beginning of Parshas Va'era, there is a Pekida. There is an awakening of the Jewish people.
Both processes?
Both of them are processes, and both of them have people that are involved in them. And we'll get there. There are processes and people. But it's important to point out, and the Ramchal says that there is a blueprint. No, it's both of them are necessary.
Argue that it's,
No.
some say it's one.
No.
or the other.
No. Both of these things, says the Ramchal, need to occur. In every stage of Galus and Geulah, there are two stages. There is a natural stage and a miraculous stage. And one goes through the natural stage and arrives at the miraculous stage. The natural stage is called Pekida, and the miraculous stage is called Zechira. That's very, very simple. But the Kabbalistic intentions that he's meaning here is that in the world of Spheros, there is a Sphera called Yesod and a Sphera called Tiferes. Now, I don't know how familiar Chabra are about Spheros, and probably next week we're going to need to spend, or not next week, in 2 weeks' time. Next week, Ramesh Weinberg is coming to BRS, and we're all going to be there, so it's kedai to be there. We're not going to have Chabura here. Very kedai to be there. But we're going to talk about what the Spheros are. But you should know that each of the Spheros are connected to certain personalities in Tanakh. What you For our purpose, interchangeable. The pasuk says tzaddik, yesod, olam. Tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Tzaddik is Maamar HaGeulah. Tzaddik is also Yosef HaTzaddik. So Maamar HaGeulah is Yosef, and that's why Yaakov gives Yosef that bracha. Maamar HaGeulah oisim mikol yivarach hasanari. Who does he give that bracha to? From Menashe, the children of what's his name? That's him and Noach had
No,
The part-
each tzaddik.
right. Part of the we'll get there. But what's important to note is that there are two processes that happen in order for the Geulah to occur. One is a Yosef process, that's a Yesod process, and one is a Tiferes process, which is a Yaakov process, and which is connected to the Malchus project, which is David. We'll get to all of those relationships. We're going to explain. We're going to explain what all those details mean, and the Ramchal is going to explain to us.
Splendor.
Splendor. That's
Stuff up in the teeth.
no, Splendor with the OR at the end. That's
Not fake sugar.
right.
So to speak.
So this is important. This is important to understand.
Mm.
Let's just finish off this single likud here. It says "V'higia hatzadik hazeh shenischaber im hashchina," and when there is this awakening where Yesod, where Yosef is speaking to the Shechin, to the presence of Hashem that is amongst the Jewish people. As niftacha hastima hanasis b'rishon b'vnei ha'galus k'may shamarti. Then that blockage that makes it impossible for us to experience good lives on a national level, that blockage is removed. And the hiddenness of Hashem's presence is less than it used to be. Still not Hashem fully fledged out there for us to see and experience and understand, but Hashem's face is considerably less hidden than it used to be. And we experience this in terms of the goodness of our lives. Our lives are definitely, absolutely better than our ancestors 200 years ago. It's just truth. We are experiencing a better life. To them, and we've made note of this a number of times, to our grandparents, we are already living in the times of Mashiach. They look at us, right, and they'll be like, hold on. You have nice homes and stock, right, and that you can even work from, and you have and you have access to Torah wherever you want, right? All of human knowledge in the palm of your hand. Eretz Yisrael under Jewish sovereign control, that you can hop on a plane and daven at the Kosel tomorrow. Like, that's awesome. For our ancestors, this is already Yemasa Mashiach. And to a certain extent, it is. Pekida. It's the beginning. It's not. The same way that if you would have asked the Jew in Mitzrayim, once the Makos begin, they stopped being slaves. They weren't free, but they weren't working anymore. Meaning that the landlords, literally, the lords of their lands, weren't whipping them anymore. They were worried about blood and lice and anymore. So hold on, were they free? It's better. It's definitely better. That's what we're holding right now. We're like in Mitzrayim. There's Makos happening.
How many years was the first Makkah to?
So Chazal said that it was a year
From first Makkah.
from the first Makkah until we left.
Until Kriyas Yamsuf.
Yeah, until Makkah's Becharos. So we'll get there. It says at that point there's has the panim kavrishon. It's not like Hashem's face is hidden as it once was. So you need to know two things. Shaloi husar hester panim ela lifnai velifnim makam nishmas Yisrael v'lo lachutz makam hamashartim v'hachayalim. That the hester panim is removed in the most internal way, but externally there's still very much hester panim, meaning we don't experience hester panim as we once did. But as far as the rest of the world is concerned, they don't see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence at all. You understand? For Klal Yisrael, life is better than it was. But the world doesn't appreciate Klal Yisrael any more than they did.
For everybody, life is better.
Correct, because it's better for us. We experience a better world than our ancestors did at a time of Pekida. But as far as the rest of the world is concerned, they don't experience that Klal Yisrael is better than.
Neither do non-from Jews.
Again,
This argument
what-
every day.
That point notwithstanding, the point is that as far as the Gilui Elokus of the world recognizing, realizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists and that Klal Yisrael is the Am HaNivchar, so this is only lifnai v'lifnim. It's for sensitive souls that get it. Externally, nobody notices a thing. We get it. We get it that the world is different than it used to be. That Klal Yisrael is different. We're experiencing something that the rest of the world is not noticing. Again, because everybody's lives seem to be getting better. So, like, what's different? We know that it's different. We know that there's something unique going on here. We have sovereign rulership over Eretz Yisrael, or at least large parts of it. Right? It's not, look at that. Because Baruch Hu is welcoming these people home. This is that you also need to know. That's thing number one to know, is that die, Jews. This is that you also need to know. Mizelifnim. Furthermore, he says, Beis shaloi hayisa psicha rak l'shata v'loi amda tamid. That window of Pekida is not permanently open. That experience of, whoa, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is welcoming us home, opens and closes. Like, life is better, but in 1948, Jews felt Pekida. In 1967, Jews felt Pekida. On October 7th, Jews did not feel Pekida. The window opens and closes.
Do we need to do something during the time that it's open?
Okay, so that's a good question, and we're going to get there. It says, Ach, asapulasa, that mid of Yesod, it does something happens, v'oid niskar hashar acharaha, and then the gate closes, ad amud go la'olam, until the eventual Redeemer comes. And it opens, closes, opens, closes. There's flashes of Pekida until the Zechira comes. It's not permanently open. Be'Hashem Yisbarach, we are going to dive a lot deeper into that world of what Pekida is, what it looks like, and what the avoda during the Zman of Pekida is. Be'Hashem Yisbarach, that and more in 2 weeks' time. Be'Hashem Yisbarach, we will see that. Shkoyach. Thank you to the Chaver for joining us online.